the start of your life, born in New York City, moved to Israel when you were 3 years old, had an accident in your life as a teen that changed your life forever, started you on a path where you made the best of a horrible circumstance in terms of sharpening your mind to be an observer, and then more than observe, you tried to get to the root cause of what drives our behavior, our decision making. Tell us about your accidental shift in your life and how that's influenced your career.
Yeah, so maybe I'll use this funny half a beard as a way to talk about this. So
what half a beard?
so this half a beard has three reasons. The first one is, as you said, I was badly injured, and most of my body is covered with scars, including this side of my face. So this is all scar tissue, so hair just doesn't grow. It's almost symmetrical, but
Huh.
that's the scar tissue, and most of my body is like that. But of course, for many years I shaved, and when I shaved, I looked less strange. It was less obvious. Right now, it's a very stark change. And then a few years ago, I went on a month-long hike, and during that month, I didn't shave, and I came out of it a little bit like this: a little bit more hair, a little bit less white. And I still remember the first time I looked in the mirror carefully, and I didn't like this look. It's a very strange look for anybody who's looking at me. It was strange for me. And I said to myself that I'll shave, but I'll keep it for a few weeks, just as a memory of the hike that was still going on. So I kept the half a beard.
Where was that hike?
In Israel. I went there's an Israel trail from the north to the south. It takes a little bit more than a month. I hiked it for a month. By the way, it was a beautiful hike, and I invited people to join me for a day for different parts, and I introduced new people, and I had an online application. You could apply to hike with me for a day.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was lovely. People said why they want to hike with me, and what they're bringing to the table, and what topics they want to discuss. It was really a wonderful event. And then I finished with a big party at the end, and I invited some of the people that hiked with me, and some of my old friends. But so the first strange things about this half a beard was that a few people started writing me and thanking me for the half a beard. For example, there was a woman in her 50s that wrote me and said that she had a car accident when she was 17. She didn't wear a dress or a skirt since, and now she's going to try. And I get lots of those. By the way, the last one was last week. So people keep on writing me and say, thank you for being so out with your injury. I'm going to try and hide a little bit less. And when it happened, when I got these notes from people, I said, okay, maybe I should keep this half a beard. If it's a public service announcement, let me keep it going. But the really strange thing for me happened about 4 months down the line with this half a beard. And 4 months down the line, I felt better about my own injury. And, it's been a long time. I've been injured for most of my life. I started thinking, why now? Why do I feel that these scars are less scars and more the story of my life? What happened? And then I thought about what these people were telling me about the hiding. And I realized that for me, half shaving was also hiding. Imagine I wake up, smooth on this cheek, little black dots on this cheek. And the act of shaving is also an act of becoming less non-symmetrical. It's an act of blending in. It's an act of looking less strange. And I thought that, maybe the process of trying to blend in and hide was an unhealthy process. And letting go of that and say, you know what? This is me. I'm non-symmetrical. I have all of these issues. I can't move my hand. I have all of these things. That process basically was incredibly instrumental in self-acceptance. So why am I telling all this as an introduction? First of all, it explains my injury. It explains that I think lots of understanding comes from mistakes, not intentional. But it also kind of tells you what I think social science is about. Social science is about showing us little hints for how to improve our lives that are not part of our natural intuition. For example, this half a beard, if you asked me 10 years ago, hey, should you have half a beard? I would have said absolutely no. And why would I have said absolutely no? Because I would have thought about day one with half a beard. Day one is not fun. People point, kids ask, some people laugh. The process that is very useful is the long-term process, but we don't have good intuition about it. And I see my goal as a social scientist is about trying to uncover those things, these half beards, these things that give us unexpected sources of happiness, but that we don't see from our intuition. And somebody tell, hey, try this and this. It has this benefit. So
You do a lot of things. You're a teacher, you're a scientist, you're an author, you're a speaker, you're an entrepreneur.
yeah,
And I would say you're an entertainer too, because it's not good enough to be smart and it's not good enough to have insight unless you can communicate that in a way that people find interesting and can learn from. And you do that. You capture a room. I was looking at some videos of you from years ago over the weekend. And your visual is so much more impactful than just, I used to read your column in the Wall Street Journal. And I have to tell you that I'd have to go back and read it a couple of times. But you on a with a microphone on a stage or a platform, you own that room.
thank
Did,
you.
did that always come naturally to you, or it's like your journey with the half beard? Is it
Yeah.
have you learned your way into enjoying? It seems like you're looking at the world and you're having fun picking at it and getting to conclusions, and you do that with an audience. You love leading them down.
I do, and I think there are two elements here that are kind of for me important. And the first one is that early on, I developed the perspective that the world is a loving, cooperative world. And I was thinking about why I developed this perspective. And I think in a
I
strange
wasn't
way,
expecting you to say that.
and I think in a strange way, it was because of my time in hospital,
Which was how long?
about 3 years. About 3 years.
Wow.
But during the time in hospital, people got tested and did the right thing. My friends, my family, the medical staff. I have a friend who had a so-so relationship, and then her brother got into real trouble, and her significant other really stood up, really proved himself, and she described to me her significant other, and she kind of found a whole new love for him because in a daily life he wasn't able to do much for her. Take the garbage out. All of a sudden there was a real emergency, and he just showed his true character. He was always a wonderful guy, but it wasn't visible. If
So
you if you
so her emotions about him changed because of the incident. So our emotions about our partner are changing over time, all the time, aren't they?
That's right. But if you live a regular life, a standard life, when can your partner stand above and beyond and do something that would amaze you? There's no calling for it. Yes, they could try, but the moment you're down and out, now they have a real chance of doing so. And I had years when I had to rely on people to the nth degree. People that were inflicting pain on me and helping me. I mean, there was just this realization that everybody around me, I could count on them more than I expected. If you think about now, just to be clear, I'm not wishing burns on anybody, I'm not wishing injury on anybody, but it gave me the opportunity to see the real character of the people around me. And every time people surprised me in a positive way,
Mm.
beyond my expectation. The nurses, the doctors, my family. So I think I developed this approach that says the world is unbelievably supportive. So for me, and we're going back to your question about the stage, I think that I have this very much feeling of, we're here together. Yes, I'm on the stage, you're in a seat, but we're here together to have fun and support each other and learn something together. So I always had this feeling that I'm going to support you, you're going to support me. We're here in a positive way. I never felt it was an antagonistic, difficult place. I felt we're here to learn together. And the second thing is that I always felt that I'm more like a tour guide.
Yes.
Here we are in a room. I happen to know more than you about social science. You know a lot more than me about other things. Right now, we're talking about social science, so I'm leading the way, but it's not the final word. We haven't fixed everything. There's lots of new questions, and I'm just the tour guide. And
You're still hiking.
yeah, and I'm happy to take questions, and I'm happy to be challenged, and I'm happy to change my mind if I'm wrong. It's not there's no the, So I think the combination of all of that made for me talking with people incredibly fun, because I wasn't just I we're here to figure out something together, and it gave me permission to tell jokes and to try new things and to kind of in a spirit of we're here in a positive way to try and learn something together. I have a slightly different role than you, but we are all here together. Uh,
You describe this incident when you were observing this very positive side of human behavior when you were in hospital, and a nurse was slowly removing bandages from your burns, and you dealt. So here you are. You're a prisoner in this damaged body, observing things around you and trying to guess at the motivations of people. What behave as you're becoming a behavioral scientist in your own imposed laboratory. And then you came to conclusions about why she's moving at a certain pace. And all of a sudden you challenge that. Tell us about that.
yeah. By the way, this framing of feeling like a prisoner in my own body was very, very correct at the time. I felt my body was betraying me in a very interesting, in a very difficult way. So one of the things that happened with burns is in the beginning it's open, right? There's no skin and so on.
Mm.
Later, after the transplant, it closes. But then, for example, if I sat with my elbow bent, I couldn't straighten my hand. I would have to start slowly, slowly, slowly. The skin shrinks very quickly.
Mm.
And opening it, it's a bit like Indian burn. You know how the kids do this Indian
Yes.
burn that they get? So if I would sit with my elbows for an hour, then I would have to start physical therapy and slowly, slowly, slowly over an hour to stretch my hands or move my
Wow.
neck or something like that. And that was unbelievably tough in terms of feeling that my body was betraying me. It was feeling that, I was sitting with my elbows bent for an hour, my body was shrinking on me, and I had to fight against it in a very painful to open my elbows. And sometimes I would fail. I couldn't open them again, and I'll have to do a surgery and open it with the surgery and repeat. But back to your question, yes, the nurses believed that ripping bandages quickly was the right thing to do. And Melzak, the pain researcher, has a description he called pain people. And what he means by pain people is that
There's two people experiencing pain: you and the person who's
and then
causing your pain.
yeah. But he said that the pain, when a person becomes a pain person, it means that their whole entity is just about pain. There's no future, there's no thoughts, there's no planning. Pain is just filling everything you have. And I was very much in that category for a very long time. It was just about pain. I didn't have a long-term view on life. I didn't have hopes. I was just trying to figure out how to deal with the current pain. And one of the things that I developed in this process was to both experience the pain and try and observe it at the same time. So I would experience the pain, and I would also ask myself, what kind of pain is it? Is it sharp? Is it dull? Is it burning? Is it prolonged? Is it located? So I kind of had these two layers of both experiencing the agony, but some of it was
Being a
observing.
clinician. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And in that process of becoming a bit more of an outsider as well, I also started asking questions. Is ripping bandages quickly the right approach? Um, and my answer to myself was maybe not. And then I asked the nurses about it, and they said that ripping the bandage off quickly is the right approach. And I said, I don't think so. Maybe not. And they said, we think so. And of course, they were doing what they thought was right.
And you were challenging their foundation of understanding, and if you challenge that, that might have changed how they thought about their job. So that gave them comfort to have third-party verification that this is the way to do it.
Yeah. In retrospect, so my first experiments outside of hospital at the university were about how to deliver pain, and I learned that ripping the bandages quickly is not the right approach. The slow is the right approach. That if you take time and intensity, if you make something from 30 minutes to an hour, you don't multiply the intensity. Mm-hmm. But if you take something from intensity, let's call it 8, let's call it 5 to 10, that's a big deal. So the intensity matters more than the duration, and the nurses didn't do it. Now, in retrospect, they had a motivation to finish and get out of there, right? So yeah. I'm not saying that they were not wonderful, kind people. They were, but they were also clouded by the fact that for a nurse to inflict pain on a patient,
completely, I thought their whole reason to be there.
Terrible. It's terrible. I met one of my nurses on the street last month. We hugged. I mean, this burn department, the nurses are there for a long time with the patients. It's a very, very long process.
And it's not just a job. It's a calling.
That's right. That's right. Anybody, by the way, nurses in general, anybody in the medical profession is often a calling. And burn departments are tough, right? You see people who are in unbelievable pain, disfigured, and the medical staff has to mostly contribute to pain. Mm-hmm. And aside from 5 times a day when they would come with a morphine shot, the rest of it is they're inflicting pain. And I would scream. I would scream a lot. And imagine, I don't know how I don't think I could deliver pain to somebody who's screaming and begging to stop, and I can't take it any longer. And I would count from 10 down and say, okay, I can have 10 more seconds in me. And I would shout as slowly as I could to prolong. I say, okay, give me a break. It's awful. It's awful for them as well. But they wanted it over. And for them, the duration mattered more. So
now let me ask you, you've done the scientific part of that to demonstrate on a graph, pain, duration, intensity. I bet conventional wisdom is still get it over with quick.
So, part of this goes back to how am I spending my time? I think part of the goal of social science is not just to write papers for us, but to get it out.
To change what we do for scientific reasons.
That's right. So I give talks in lots of hospitals. I have basically 3 rules for organizations that invite me that I always go. I always go to hospitals because I think hospitals can do so many things better, and I want them to understand social science. Every time a government wants me to talk to them, because government have such a big impact.
Influence, yeah.
And every time a Muslim country, I'm getting an invitation from a Muslim country, I go.
Tell me more.
I'm Jewish. I'm Israeli.
No, you're an Israeli? No kidding.
And
because you think you can make a change?
It's very easy to hate them.
Yes.
I think the more you get to know specific people, you get a more nuanced view. Yes, I don't expect everybody to love everybody in Israel or all the Jewish people, but I think that it's very important to break the us versus them. That's one, and the second thing I think, I mean,
Make
you're
it
right.
personal, not
Yeah,
put a personality, a face to that hatred.
that's right. And the second thing is that I think I'm in the right profession to do that, right? Because in my profession, I come and I tell people we all make the same mistakes. Think about how similar we are. Here are all the things that make us the same, and then let's even look at our emotions. Let's look at, is this really what we want, or are we being, so, there's a button that pushes us to do something. When my books came out in Arabic for the first time, I approached the publisher and I asked the publisher if I can write a letter from an Israeli author to the Arabic community that is reading my books. And sadly, they said no. Sadly, they said no. Um, but hopefully, we'll get to a better situation in a few years. But now there are a lot of writers that boycott Israel. So there are a lot of American writers that say to the Israeli publishers, "Don't publish my book. I'm not willing for you to publish my book in Hebrew." And I sent some of them some videos, and I said, "Here I am, an Israeli. At the time when my book came out, they came out in Saudi Arabia. At the time, they were an official enemy of my country. And I not only was delighted that they published my book, I wanted to write a letter to the Arabic reader. I
Uh-huh.
said, why don't you do the same? What is our responsibility as writers? We have a mechanism to bypass government. We have a mechanism to get people to think differently, to understand. And I like, if you told me, like, where would I rather publish my books? In a place that loves my country or hates my country? I prefer a place that hates my country because there's a place for an input. A place that doesn't agree with me. Like, if let's say there was a country where everybody agreed with me, okay, maybe I can sell a few more books, but it's not going to have an impact if I can get people who disagree with me and change their opinion in some way. So from that perspective, I think that I think that science is amazing because we are really a discipline that is cross border.
Yes.
Like like we are like, if you ask, like, how effective is the UN? Let's not have this discussion right now, but I think academia is the hope. We work from people from all over the world, collaborating, building on each other, and so on. Every university in the world looks sort of the same. It's an amazing thing. Like, member of the clergy of the university, but also authors, people who write books and get their ideas to be a part of the universal language. It's amazing. Like, imagine a day where people from all over the world share some common knowledge because they've read, I mean, Shakespeare, right? It will be lovely. I'm not just saying it's all about science, but it's about, we want the world to share understanding, to share ideas, to have some common basis.
So the UN, like your interest in putting a face to the enemy and going out of your way to accept speaking engagements in Muslim countries and Muslim audiences, Arab communities. Uh, well, the UN is trying to do that too. It's trying to force people to look at one another as not just a them, as you put it, but as an individual with similar wants, needs, and interests. We would presume. So while it may not be effective, it sounds to me like you certainly don't want it to go away. You just like it to be better.
Oh yeah, yeah, of course, of course. I don't want to go away. The comment I was making is that academia is eventually working together. The UN goes to mission to places to fix them. There's something
Yep.
very different, and that's needed, and so on. I would like it to get better, but there's a very different way from that to say, here we are, people from multiple parts of the world working together on projects. Like, let's say I have a friend who works on water. All of a sudden, you have people from different parts of the world working on questions that have to do with water and improving quality of water and improving ways of using it and so on. Everybody benefits.
Yes, and that's global. The get back to the frustration of your teaching. You learn this lesson about how to deep unbandage a burn patient. You accept speaking engagements all the time to go to hospital because you know you can make a change. How do you deal with the frustration of this is work you've done decades ago, and yet it's still not dogma that we should think differently about doing it? And I think back to work you did more than a dozen years ago on something as simple as let me give you a little preface. I had a young gal in here a month or so ago, and we had a discussion. She's a girl from Long Island at 15 years old. She required a heart transplant. She's now in her early 40s. And she told this unbelievable story about finding out she went from being a healthy athlete one day to needing a heart the next day, getting the heart, how long that took, and almost didn't. Maybe needs another one in a not too distant future. An amazing young lady. It was an amazing story, but it reminded me of your teaching around what motivates people to say, I'll be an organ transplanter. And I don't want to rain on your parade, but you tell a very powerful story and do a lesson with audiences about teaching them how people make decisions and how easy it is when you know the science to change how people make decisions. And yet it hasn't changed. You must go nuts.
Okay, so I don't go nuts, and I'll tell you what I do. So, look, um, we wake up in the morning and we try to have an impact, and we do our best, and sometimes the world accepts it, and sometimes not. Imagine you knock on doors, and you hope that somebody will hire you, or you go on an online dating app and you hope that somebody will date you. The ratio of trying to success is not very good. A lot of trying, very little success. And the general question is, how do we live in a world where you need to try a lot, and most of the time somebody would close the door in your face, not respond to you, and so on? I'll tell you my recipe for that. My recipe for that is believing in karma. Now, there are all kinds of versions of belief in karma in Hinduism, but I'll give you my version. My version is that karma is the law of cause and effect. When you do something good, you increase the chances that something good would happen. When you do something bad, you increase the chances that something bad would happen. Is it necessary? No, it's probabilistic. Increasing the chance of good, increasing the chance of bad. but it does something else. It's not just saying you that the outcome and the cause are probabilistically linked. It also says that your responsibility or my responsibility ends at the end of my actions. It means that if I have done my best and I knocked on the right door and I came with the right gift and I did the world is not taking it, that's fine. I mean, I would be happy if it took it, but it focuses you on, have I done my job? And if I have done my job correctly, I feel good with myself. So it basically says, we bring gifts to the world, we work hard, we do our best. As long as we do our best, we have done our job. Now, the world is random. Sometimes it will take what we've done well and take it forward. Sometimes it will not. Of course, we prefer the taking to not taking, but it's not necessary it will happen. And to what we are responsible for is for our actions, to making the right. So if I promote an idea,
Mm-hmm.
and I work on it and I bring it and I do it, and I go to a meeting and people say no, fine. I've done my job. I keep on doing the next door, the next door, the next door, but I feel good with myself. If I did the right research and came up with a good argument and tried to persuade and met with the right people and did the right thing, I of course I would prefer if they also took the idea, but I'm already satisfied. I'll give you an example. I'm working now on trying to improve the last chapter of people's lives.
Wow.
The last chapter is from the moment people get a terminal illness diagnosis until the end of life. In the
Wow.
Western world, it's a journey that is slightly longer than 5 years. And I'm trying to think about all the mistakes that people do in that process and what can we do to help. And there are many, many mistakes. I would say that in general, when people get a diagnosis of terminal illness, they change their role from being a human being to being a patient.
Wow.
And they put as a second, third, and nth priority their own lives and their own goals and so on, and they just worship the god of longevity at all cost.
And care.
Yeah. Now there's lots of other mistakes, but that's the now.
So you're calling that a mistake. Give us the alternative.
Okay, I'll give you some statistics. I mean, there are many mistakes, but I'll give you maybe 80 some percent of Americans want to die at home.
Mm-hmm.
Only 20%, 20 some percent get to die at home.
Wow.
Dying in hospital is terrible. Dying in hospital is terrible. Being hospitalized is terrible. Like imagine that you were sick. Very strange for people to come and visit. If you're very sick, you're not in the mood to entertain anybody.
Yeah.
It's a very strange thing that they come for an hour or 2 hours and just sit there. And from time to time, what you really want is to be at home, and from time to time for somebody to come and give you a kiss or to hold your hand or to ask you if you want a glass of water. That's really what you want. You don't want these 2 hours where I and the patient feel like I need to talk to you, I entertain you, and
Yeah.
when I'm tired and so on. The whole model of people in hospitals is a very strange model. I'll give you another example, very, very different. Wills. People don't think carefully about wills, and then sometimes they try to fix social things in wills.
Sure.
I have 2 kids, I didn't treat this one enough, I did this, I'll fix this, here's my brother, I didn't do this. Not the right mechanism. Do it early. Why wait to do it in the will? So there's a ton of things that people don't do well, and the question is, can we redirect people? In this process of exploring this topic, I interviewed a little bit more than 100 end-of-life doulas. I don't know if you know this profession.
I do. I've only recently learned about it because you're in an area that is of keen interest to me and to us right now. And this spring, we're going to be doing an exploration in our newsletter and in our different podcasts where we're going to, I personally, look what I get to do. I get to meet unbelievable people like you who I've been a fan of for a long time. Never did I think we'd be able to have this conversation. It's such a gift to me and a reward for just being curious, and I'm pinching myself that I get to do this. And
I love podcasts because they're really kind of a wonderful thing, right? You have an opportunity to reach out to people. You get two people get to learn a little bit about each other, and it's also not a small talk. Like if you and I met in an airport lounge somewhere, and let's say we sat and had a cup of coffee together,
yeah,
the discussion would have at least had the pressure to start as a small talk. What do you do? Like little things. Podcast does two things. It gets random people to meet and to
yes,
have a chat and to get to know each other a little bit. But at the same time, it allows us not to waste time on small talk. Like you have the social permission in your podcast
yeah.
to ask questions you're interested in, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to be polite. You can say,
We wouldn't get to do that in Terminal 4 at JFK.
That's right. By the way, there was a podcast I participated in. This amazing guy. He was on a terminal illness path, and he asked me question, I asked him question, and he told me that I at some point he was very much involved in the national parks in the U.S. And I asked him what was his favorite national park, and he said sequoia trees, the Avenue of the Giants.
Hmm.
And I went to see it, and it's amazing. And he told me, and this got me to go there. He said he never felt as close to God, and he wasn't religious as with these trees. And I'm now renovating an apartment, and I found somebody who makes tubs from recycled
Sequoia trees.
trees.
And do you have one on order?
I did, yes, yes. And it's he's working on it as we are. But anyway, going back to this, I talked to you about 100 end of life.
Last moment.
Yeah, and I asked them, one of the questions I asked them, what's a good end of life? And they said four things. Now, if we say that the journey is 5 months long, we're not talking about the last few weeks. But they said no pain, which is medically possible these days, not perfectly, but we're getting
Yeah.
closer. They said no loss of dignity in the body, which is tough to do, but we can make progress, right? So when people can't control their bowel movements, if you have hoses, it's better to put them under the blanket than over. I mean, we can do a few things. They said surrounded by love and having a sense of legacy. And, all of those are things that we can make dramatic progress toward, right? If you gave me somebody, you say, let's work on surrounded by love. Okay, I can know. You can say, let's work on having a sense of legacy. I can think about what to do. I was so impressed with the discussions with them that I actually ended up doing the training myself. So a few months ago, I got trained as an end of life doula myself, and it's anyway. I'm telling you all of this because this is kind of what I see as my role. We take a chunk of the human experience that I think we're dramatically wasting,
Yep.
that we are mismanaging. Mismanaging is maybe a good way. Like we're mismanaging this chapter of our life. We're mismanaging that part of it. And I think that we could do much better. And I think it's within the tools of social science to get us to do better. So I'm trying to dive in, understand, isolate mistakes, and then think about what we could do to improve.
I think the work you're doing now is I think everything you've done is important. I think this will really be your legacy work. There's so much that needs to be done, can be done, and for you to approach it as a social scientist is, I think, the right lens to have here. I think it's hugely important, and I think it's going to be among your most impactful efforts ever. You mentioned the five things that doulas talked about. You didn't mention faith. Is faith important to you?
um, so I'm very Jewish in terms of my values.
Culture.
So in Judaism, we think about the golden rule,
Yeah.
right? Love thy neighbor as you love yourself. Love the foreigner in your country. There is something called tikkun olam, fixing the world. There's a commandment in Judaism to work on making the world better.
Mm-hmm.
We don't assume it's built correctly, and there's a commandment to build it. So I'm very much I've very much accepted those values, trying to love everybody, trying to respect everybody, the foreigner, the non-foreigner, trying to continuously think about what we do. I give 10% to charity. I take those things without believing in God.
You embrace that as your rule book. That yep, we need a set of rules to live by, and those are really good rules.
That's right.
But
That's right. But I don't believe in God. So I, um, I don't think there's an entity that judges us when we do things. I think we are our own judges, and
but
it's
but you, but you do understand how those constructs evolved, and the idea evolved for a behavioral control mechanism.
of course. So we have these notion of evolution, right, where our genes mutate, and we have social evolution, very very similar, right, where you say, let's look at how ideas have evolved to help people. And I think that, for example, I'll give you an example. In behavioral economics, we have a notion of loss aversion.
Yes,
People hate losing more than we enjoy gaining.
and
What is
you do
that?
some unbelievable work in that area that is just so entertaining.
Thank you. But where is it coming from? Why do we have that? It's because in our evolutionary history, imagine that you're an animal in the jungle and you make a good decision. You get to a corner and you have a risky choice. If a good thing happened, how good can it be? You have food for 2 more days, maybe 4.
Yeah,
If you make a decision and it's bad, how bad can it be? You can get
real
eaten.
bad.
Yeah. So historically, in our evolutionary history, the upside and the downside were very different.
Apply that behavioral theory to God and and its existence.
Before you talk to its existence, let's just say, so what does it do? It gets us to look at the downsides. It gets us to focus on the downside and avoid downside. Now, we don't live with tigers anymore, but it's still part of our toolkit. So we are afraid of we're afraid of losing. So there are some ideas that have evolved evolutionary, being afraid of snakes, being afraid on downside, and so on. There are some mechanisms that have evolved socially without kind of a genetic predisposition. And if you think evolutionary, not genetically, evolutionary, social evolution, you think about the belief in God, it basically gets people to act nicer to each other
Yep.
and gets them to think more long term. Right? If I think
Which is
that,
the opposite of how they would behave absent a construct.
that's right. That's right. So I think that religion in kind of its basic form is basically all about getting people to be more ethical, think long term, collaborate with others,
Survive.
survive. Um, think about the rule, for example, in Judaism, we have a rule that every seventh year you're supposed not to work your field. You have a field, every 7 years you're supposed to
Is
let it
that
rest.
is that where sabbatical came from?
Yes. I mean, sabbatical came from Sabbath, a
Yep.
day of rest.
Seventh day,
But
yeah.
but a day of rest ends up being important. A year of rest for the soil ends up being important. By the way, in Judaism, all times, slaves were permitted. In that world, people were supposed to release their slaves on the seventh year. So there wasn't this. But if you think about the soil getting a chance to
Enrich.
enrich itself, it's very important. But if you don't have a law to tell you to do that, you might do something that is good for you short term, but not good for you long term. Giving 10% to charity, is very important, right? Society gets to be better off when the poor are not suffering too much, right? When they have a way to help themselves. So the religion is really a very clever mechanism to basically help all of us live in a way that is good for us long term as a society rather than good for us selfishly short term individually.
Well, that animal in the jungle says, "Well, when I get to the pearly gates, if I if I didn't believe in God, boy, did I make a big mistake. And if there is no God, what did I really waste?"
Yeah, that's right.
Long
So
termism.
that's right. So this is the emphasis on what's called the proof of God. It's like, if you're even 0.0000001% think that there's a God, you should act as if um, there is God, because when you get to the pearly gate and you have infinity,
it's a
every
it's
number
a it's a
multiplies.
big mistake. Dr. Dan, what is your life like today? You're in Tel Aviv. Are you traveling a lot? You're working on the Last Moment project. Are you teaching in classroom? What's the mix of activities you have now?
So on the creative side, I just finished writing my first kids book.
Oh, really?
It's a book on procrastination.
Uh huh.
And now I'm starting my second kids book on allowances. I helped write a TV show called The Irrational that is loosely based on my life. It's airing now on the second season is airing now on NBC.
NBC.
Yeah, it's a life of a professor that also got injured, and he's helping the FBI solves crime, and it's
What's it
about
called?
the irrational.
The Irrational. Okay.
And then they asked me to come up with an idea for a reality show based on experiments. So I'm playing with that. So
Wow.
that's kind of the creative part of my life. The day to day, so I'm in Israel now, I'm very much involved with helping establish a framework to help people with PTSD. I don't know how much you know about PTSD. It's a very, very tough disease.
Yeah, I've gotten to know something about it because I have a partner who's become a very good friend who's an expert in PTSD. His name is Dr. George Everly. He's at Johns Hopkins. He's on the Bloomberg School of Public Health faculty. He's on the School of Medicine at Johns Hopkins, and he's a renowned expert on PTSD. So by osmosis, I've been learning a little bit about it
Yeah.
from him over the last few years.
Yeah, and that department has really innovated most of the research on psychedelics and MDMA
Yes.
on PTSD. So I'm
He created an institute that trains first responders globally
yeah
on how to handle the stress of those horrible
yeah.
situations they have to confront.
Yeah. We have a lot of new orphans. Orphans are being an orphan is very complex, but the downsides are very so. So I have this creative corner. I have the daily dealing with some of the hostages that came back, some of the soldiers that were injured,
Mm.
PTSD, orphans, and then I'm trying to spend some time thinking about the big challenges that are um, facing all of us. What do we do with hate? Look, for example, at Wikipedia. The last 2 years, but with much more intensity in the last year and a half, people are trying to rewrite history on Wikipedia.
Mm.
People are eliminating Jewish history. People are eliminating the Holocaust. One of the most contentious items on Wikipedia these days is Hitler. Now, Hitler died a while ago, but the fact that he is still contentious tells you something about the fact that one of the most contentious, one of the most actively changed items on Wikipedia just tells you how much the fights on Wikipedia are ideological, right? Because nothing really new is happening with Hitler.
Yep.
It's not an evolving story. Every attempt is basically rewriting history and unrewriting history and writing history. So there are lots of things like that could have been corners of human beauty, and now are corners for
Hate.
people with bad intentions. The
Mm.
world. What is so wonderful about the way that we have built the world is that much of it has been built for people with good intention,
Yes.
welcoming, supportive, and so on.
And a
And when you
small
help
group
people,
of ill-intentioned people can undo a lot.
that's right.
We're lucky that you're out there fighting the fight, not only doing the research that helps us to understand why we do the things we do and how we can change that. I suspect one of the things that you've learned is you learned to be an optimist, and you shared so many examples with us today of how that attitude and that approach to life can make life more wonderful and richer. And I especially love the work you're doing on the last moment.
Last
I
chapter.
can't
Last chapter.
last chapter. Okay, is to visit the work you're doing there. We have so much to learn from you in that regard. And if anything I can do, my mission now is to help get your message out because it's so good and so strong and so valuable. Uh, how lucky am I? I get to spend this time with you and learn from you. And I think back a little over a year ago, I got to spend this time like this with David Brooks. And just 6 weeks ago, I got to sit down with a lady, a 96-year-old lady named Edith Gross, who survived Auschwitz and two other camps. And she shared with me her story. I'm not over it. I never will be. That meeting her and getting to know her and now befriending her has been one of the gifts of my life. And I count you among my gifts, is to have read your work, is to watch your videos, have learned from you, and now have the opportunity to get to know you a little bit today. Thank you. Thank
Thank you
you for
very
being
much.
so
Jim.
generous with all you do.
My pleasure. It's been wonderful to get to know you a little bit.
Great. I hope we get to do it again. Good luck with this work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Dan Ariely.
Take care.